Hello, BookTube. A little while ago, Matthew at Mayberry Book Club did an unusual tag, a tag that involved me, in which he asked the question, has Steve read these books? He goes through his library and looks for, I think he pulled down 8 books that seemed to him to be a little bit obscure, a little bit off the beaten path, not flagrant things, old computer manuals or old campground guides or whatever, but so things that I might have read, but that he didn't think that maybe I had read. Uh, and he tried his hand at it, and it was a lot of fun. Uh, and he made the video into a tag, and the tag has gone viral. He has hit a home run on his first try at plate, and lots of people are doing this. I've done this tag so to the point where I could do a response video every day. I've decided, a little bit belatedly for Matthew, I will make a response video for him, but I decided that this is just too fun not to make a response video to every one of these, especially since, unlike a lot of booktubers, it doesn't require a whole lot of effort on my part to make a video. I just turn the camera on and start talking to you. And, uh, and so I have been responding to these videos. And naturally, some stats have started to evolve. The more people do it, the more there are stats involved of how well people do. Matthew's total of books that I had not read out of the ones that he suggested was 2. And he was followed by 2. And the number varied around there. And then Samuel Darm kicked it up to 3. And then Hannah at Hannah's Books brought it all the way up to 4. 4 books on her list that I hadn't read, including one that she co-wrote herself. Numbers have varied back down from there, and hope springs eternal. As I've said, people want to see how well they'll do. So I have a lot of response videos still to do, and more people are doing this tag. So today we are doing Lukash at Totally Pretentious. I will leave a link to his channel and to his video down below, just in case you're not familiar with him. He's a mighty smart young guy. he's a mighty smart and mighty adventurous reader. But as he himself points out in his Has Steve Read It video, our reading realms are a lot of the general areas of interest and emphasis in his reading are very similar to some of mine. So he worries at the beginning of his video that maybe he won't do that well, but the whole thing is the thrill of the chase. It's the challenge of poking the bear anyway. So we're going to look over. He picked 6 books. I think that's the lowest number that anybody's picked so far that I've done, but the number doesn't really matter. There aren't any real hard and fast rules here. Just that it's a lot of fun, and that the losers get their faces smushed in the mud. So we're gonna go through his choices and see how he fares. The first one that he picks is an older book called The Personality of the Cat, and this was a playful jab at my well-known antipathy for Satan's handmaidens. But believe it or not, the thing that I have read this book, not just in the sense of knowing one's enemy, but also for an X factor that is going to screw up a lot of people in the Has Steve Read It tag, which is the access to the Brattle Bookshop. There's a used bookstore in Boston, here in Boston, that has 3 floors of great books on the inside, all reasonably priced, and then the whole lot next door, where a whole building would ordinarily otherwise be, is bargain books in perfectly good condition, usually. $1, $3, and $5 bargain books on every subject under the sun, thousands of them. And they change all the time. The Brattle is constantly buying books. And I have been going to the Brattle for 50 years, sometimes every day. I don't really go there as much as I used to, and I certainly don't go there when it's freezing cold. I used to do that. I used to go even in the snow and sleet. If the Brattle bargain carts were uncovered, I would go, but not so much lately. Next time there's a sunny, temperate day, I will go and I will take you along. But I found The Personality of the Cat at the Brattle, and it was $1. It had a dust jacket that didn't look like it was in much worse repair than the one that Lukash held up, and it's a very good anthology. I may not be the biggest fan of its subject, a haughty, uppity, and flagrantly parasitic house pet that can jump 10 feet from a standing start, see in the dark, and isn't capable of withdrawing its claws from you voluntarily. You have to pry the claws out. Uh, Lukács has a gigantic black cat. But the personality of a cat, he was probably hoping that's about as close as you can get to Dirty Pool in this challenge, is to pick a book that you know that I won't want to read in the hopes that I haven't read it. But I read lots of stuff, even stuff on subjects that I don't like, as you would be able to tell if you've watched my channel in 2019, because I have scarcely missed a Trump-related book in the whole of that year. In fact, the very first, as far as I can know, I mean, I might have missed some because I didn't know they were there, but as far as I know, the very first Trump book that I have intentionally avoided reading is Donald Trump Jr.'s book, Triggered. And in this case, I'm not putting triggered in quotes because it's the title of the book. I'm putting the word book in quotes because I don't know what it is, but I took a tiny glance at it and realized that even in the thin gruel of Trump books, this is literally not worth my time. So I haven't read it, but I've read most of them, and so I will read books even on subjects that I dislike. So that's a yes. Then the next one is the next one gave me a chuckle. He didn't mean to give me a chuckle, but I chuckled anyway. It's Boleto by Allison Hagy, which is a novel that I have read, and Lukács, it seemed to me in his video like maybe his reaction was a little lukewarm. Mine was as well. I didn't think it was anything to write home about. But the thing that made me chuckle is that he said that it was published by a small press I've never heard of called Grey Wolf. Grey Wolf is a small press. They are well known in my circles anyway. Maybe not in the general public. I would be laughed out of a critic's social gathering if I said that I'd never heard of Grey Wolf. Only no, I wouldn't be, because in a critic's social gathering it would be at Hyde Cottage and I would be paying for the food and wine, so I wouldn't be laughed out, would I now? Critics, I tell you, can't live with them, can't make them productive members of society. But the next one astounded me, that Lukács would. There's always one book on these lists. There's always one, even if it's just 6 books. There's always one book where its presence on the list astonishes me. Not because I think the person who made the list, like I'm astonished that they know about it or have read it, but that they would think I hadn't read it. And fortunately, there's only one really here on Lukács's list, and it's this next one. It's The Human Use of Human Beings by Norbert Weiner, who is an amazingly fascinating figure. This book went through a little vogue, even, I think about 10 years ago, when one of the Green brothers, basically the architects of confessional YouTube as we know it today, enthused. I don't remember which Green brother it was, but I don't think I've seen the video, but I remember that all of a sudden people were asking me about this book that I know had never heard of it before one of the Green brothers enthused about Norbert Weiner. But this the human use of human beings. Lukács mentions that it's uncannily prescient. It is. And it won't take you long to read. It's a dense book, but it's very readable. And it was done 60 years ago. About its essential concentration is about the human relationship with technology. At the time that Norbert Weiner wrote it, a middle-class human, a middle-class person in America could live their entire life without coming in contact with any sophisticated technology, almost. Anything beyond a combustion engine. Nor even Norbert Weiner, who was a child prodigy and an amazing intellect and an amazing futurist, never conceived that in the lifetime of his own children, everybody would have access to the technologies I'm using right now. The computer circuitry in the phone that I'm recording on is more sophisticated than the computer circuitry that put men on the moon. And it's routine. In fact, this is an old phone. The computer circuitry in this thing, this is a camera, a sound studio, an editing booth, a phonograph, this is a notebook, a library. This is a million different things in this thing. That's ridiculous. Norbert Weiner would not have understood. He would not have predicted this. But his book is very good about, it's very prescient in the conceptuality, the ideas of humans in connection with technology. I strongly recommend you to read it. I think Lukács does too in his video. If you can find a copy, I really hope that someday Penguin Classic my beloved Penguin Classics. I hope that someday they reprint the book with a new introduction. Get whichever Green brother enthused about it. Pay him. I'm sure that if you pay him a week's worth of cocaine money, he'd write an introduction for it, and then there you go. You'd have a bestseller on your hands. So that's a yes. That's an enthusiastic yes. Then the next two choices on Lukash's list. Again, he is skirting the edge of dirty pool by picking 2 slim volumes of poetry, because forever and ever I mocked slim volumes of poetry on this channel, and before I had this channel, I mocked them as being precious and navel-gazing and largely intentionally incomprehensible. Lukash is right. He makes a quick mention on his video that just because I mock something doesn't mean I don't read it. If I get a book, I tend to read it. I usually read everything I'm sent. And the first of the ones that he picks is a slim volume of poetry that I was sent. And I did read it, and it stands out in my mind, even after all this time, 10 years, it stands out in my mind as something that I really liked, something that was really good. Granted, at the time that I read it, it's A Living Must Bury by Josie Sigler. Came out in 2010. And at the time that I read it, I vaguely remember, I'm sure that I thought, well, this is great language and these are great conceptions. It's too bad this isn't structural poetry. Because at the time I was still judging it a little bit strictly and a little bit outdatedly by 19th century metrical standards. I wouldn't do that anymore because I have, as Lukash points out, I have been reading contemporary poetry, still with a stern eye, at least a little bit. If writers just blork all over the page and then call it poetry, I'm going to call them a fraud. But we have read on this channel in 2019 quite a bit of contemporary poetry that was quite good. So that I like to think that some of the seeds of that were born in books like this. But the next book is also a slim volume of poetry, and it is a no. It's called The Light on the Tent Wall by Mary Tallmountain. And I don't think I've ever even seen it, except on Lukash's channel, and I certainly haven't read it. That's another thing that I love about this tag, is that people are holding up books that I've never even heard of. And that's awesome. We don't tend to do that on BookTube, right? And not just hold them up, but enthuse about them, talk about them, give a little glimpse of our history with them. To me, that is the signature genius of this tag. The signature fun of watching is to watch what people pick and what they think about it. And then the last book, the last of the 6, is Crazy Brave by Joy Harjo. And it's a memoir by the woman who was the very first Native American Nobel laureate in America's history. And I confess, I have read it, and I confess that I read it for that reason. I went back and I went and sought it out because of that, which doesn't make any sense because it's a memoir. It's not poetry. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did enjoy it. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as Lukash seemed to have, but I enjoyed it. I remember liking the language used quite a bit. And there's a little wisp of magical realism that runs throughout it, and I like that too. I tend to like that in my memoirs. And that is the Totally Pretentious version, the Totally Pretentious edition of the Has Steve Read It tag. And if you were keeping score at home, and you realize that that Lukash's tally was one book that I hadn't read. So not only does he not crack 2, but he also doesn't come anywhere close to dethroning Hannah from Hannah's books, who is still the Chancellor of the Klingon High Council. she is still unchallenged. So I'm going to link all of this stuff down below. That was a wonderful attempt on Lukash's part, and I'm sure that he will get over the deep social stain of being a 1 on the list. Well, I'm sure you'll get over it. I'm sure that I'll have more company by the time this whole thing is over, because more people are doing this every day. So I will, if I can, I will get to someone else's response tomorrow. And we'll just keep going until we run out of it, until I run out of responses. And then I'll do Matthew. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.